Theodore, you fool.
I hope that Colorado
treats you very well. Hello and welcome to Queers Can't Words.
Yeah.
It's October.
It is.
I'm sorry. We recorded this in July.
Yeah.
And
Was it?
Yeah.
It was.
And I haven't uploaded it till now, so.
To be fair, Andy's computer went deceased. So we haven't been able to edit with it, but we've been recording. So we have other stuff recorded, just not edited. Edited. Yeah. It's been a hot minute, and for that we apologize, but we are not by any means professionals.
I also apologize. It's mostly my fault, but we're working on it.
It's okay. But anyway, for this episode, we'll be interviewing 3 lovely non-binary individuals. We've got my sibling, Cassidy.
And we'll also be interviewing a friend of ours from high school, Lauren.
Woo!
Yeah, shout out to Lauren.
Heck yeah.
And we'll also be interviewing someone that I go to school with at SAIC, Clark. And
they're pretty cool.
Yeah, they're super cool. All of them are super cool.
I haven't met them in person. I haven't met Clark in person, but it was really fun to talk to them. They were easy to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, of course I love my sibling.
Wow.
What?
Wow.
And it's always fun to talk to Lauren. Lauren's a really sweet person. But yeah, for intro, we're also gonna give y'all some definitions that we've compiled for non-binary. Does that make sense?
Yeah. The internet says
denoting or relating to a gender or sexual identity that is not defined in terms of traditional binary oppositions such as male and female or homosexual and heterosexual.
Okay.
So
Wikipedia is like, non-binary is a spectrum of gender identities that are not exclusively masculine or feminine. Identities that are outside the gender binary. Non-binary identities can fall under the transgender umbrella, since many non-binary people identify with a gender that is different from their assigned sex. Their assigned sex.
Got really saucy at the end there.
So yeah, because the definition of transgender is identifying with a gender identity that is not the same as the one you were assigned at birth. So, math.
Math?
It's like math.
Is it, Andy? Is it like math?
It's division. It's addition. It's subtraction. Okay, I can't do math, obviously.
Clearly.
So, me calculating tip. Y'all don't even want to know what that's like.
Just use a calculator.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Should I?
Also, you should.
Okay, so, side note, sort of. Just to clarify, being non-binary is different than being intersex. And intersex is, this is also from the internet, but I will sort of paraphrase so that it's different. Intersex is a general term used for variety. It says conditions in which a person is born, but I would just say how a person is born, because it doesn't have to be a problem.
That's true.
Where basically your biological expression of sex and gender maybe doesn't match your anatomy, like on the inside or the outside. For example, someone could be perceivably female but have the, like, what is it, the Y chromosome? I obviously am not a scientist.
It's the Y.
I go to art school. And maybe have, like, a Y chromosome. So, like, you know, if you found their body and you were, like, a forensic scientist, this is a murder scene.
Goals.
And you'd be like, this skeleton is male. But actually, their biological expression of gender was a little bit more complicated than that. So that's what intersex is. It's not the same as non-binary. You could be non-binary and intersex, but being non-binary doesn't mean that you have, like, an expression of biological gender that is then both genders, like maybe an intersex person would, if that makes sense. There's also a TED Talk by Emily Quinn, who's an intersex female, It's called The Way We Think About Biological Sex is Wrong. And it's very interesting. I recommend you watch it if you want to. Yeah, so
this podcast is not sponsored by TED Talks, but we encourage you to listen to this one.
Yeah.
Because, why not? Education is always a good thing. And if you feel confused about anything that we talk about in this episode, I encourage everyone to just, research it a bit more. Not that I really feel like our listening base is the type of people who wouldn't understand this, but if you are, hello.
Well,
go read a book.
If you're confused about non-binary identities, then this episode may be a good place to learn more, since we interview 3 people and they will talk about their definitions of non-binary, their experiences, and their kind of, I don't want to say
thoughts.
Journey. Yeah, their
kind of their journey.
Their journey, their thoughts about their gender and gender expression. Yeah.
So we have a list of non-binary people, celebrities, who y'all may not know about. And we're kicking that list off with fucking A. Watch me stutter.
Okay.
We're kicking this list off with Jonathan Van Ness from Queer Eye.
Bridget Lundy Payne from, if you've watched the show Atypical, they're in that and some other shows. I love them. Anyways.
We forgot to look up how to pronounce the next person's last name again, and I'm afraid to.
Cara Delevingne.
There we go.
Cara Delevingne.
Actor, because we struggle to, I struggle to pronounce that name. Anyway, yes, Cara Delevingne. There we go, yes.
Rhea Butcher, who's a comedian. They're very funny. Recommend.
Yeah. We also got Castles, who is an artist, right?
Yes!
Yeah.
Castles is a really good artist. Just, I'm a fan. Okay. Dorian Electra.
They're a singer. They have some bops, honestly, and good music videos with a lot of color.
Thanks.
Then we also have Rain Dove, who is
a musician.
Nice.
We have Grimes. I love Grimes.
Also a musician.
A musician. Yeah. Married to Elon Musk. Has a baby. All that.
Nice.
Yeah.
We got Rose McGowan, an actor.
So Ezra Miller, who is an actor, and you've probably seen them in Perks of Being a Wallflower.
Yep.
Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Probably.
I feel like they were in something
other
much
movies.
more recently. That's on the tip of my tongue, but I can't think of it.
I don't know.
Anyway, we also have Ruby Rose, also an actor kind of, but mostly a model, right?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Queer icon, actor.
Yeah. Well, they've been in a few things,
model.
like Pitch Perfect 3.
They were in Pitch Perfect 3?
Yeah.
I haven't watched Pitch Perfect 3.
They were in one of the bands. Yeah, and then last but not least, we have Rebecca Sugar. They did the animated show Steven Universe, which is high quality representation of non-binary and LGBTQ characters.
Yay.
And I totally recommend y'all go watch it. It's so well done. And I digress.
Yeah. Yes, Steven Universe. So we also have I guess just a couple other non-binary people. We have Prince, who you know how
Prince is
rock
awesome.
stars be kind of gender bendy. That's hot.
It's not. Yeah, I feel like sometimes you can see more frequently in live music performances how an artist doesn't have to conform to gender norms and doesn't necessarily feel a whole lot of pressure to, as opposed to in TV or movie media it's a bit stricter And we're only, like, just now kind of trying to work through that a bit more, maybe.
Yeah, for sure.
Because we also got, you know, like, David Bowie rocking the...
Oh, yes, David Bowie.
Everything.
Yes!
And more currently, we have Sam Smith and Andy's favorite, King Princess.
King Princess! And King Princess is, like, lesbian. But also, she made a post on Instagram about, like, their kind of being in between genders and sometimes feeling more like one than the other and having that kind of switch. Anyways,
Yeah.
so I put them on the list.
Yeah, King Princess came up a lot during the planning and recording of this episode. And that spans over, like, 2 months, so...
King Princess, if you're listening, I love you. And I know that you're a Sagittarius. And I know that we'd be compatible because I'm also a fire sign. And I also know that you're a Capricorn moon.
Fire sign?
And I'm a Capricorn moon. So we have so much in common. Even though you're, like, a famous musician. And, you know, that's cool. I'm not that. But
this is adorable
we
to
could
watch.
be friends. I think we could be really good
support
friends.
your dreams.
Thank you.
I think one day you and King Princess will be in love.
Cool. Thank you.
Yes. Because you always support my
I do
unrealistic
support-
dreams about...
Sarah Paulson.
Stop! Okay, because we're now recording this and releasing this after Ratchet came out. I am not okay, everybody. And that's all I'm going to say right now. And that doesn't even necessarily, like, pertain only to Ratchet. That's just one of the many things that I am not okay about. But in a good way with this one. I'm getting really emotional, so I'm going to stop there. Okay.
So anyway.
That's for later. Anyway,
So
yes.
Sarah Paulson is wifey. Anyways, so for this episode, we will be interviewing, 3 people. We are, I think, in editing, because I'm editing right now. I'm sorry, y'all. It's like October.
It's okay.
This episode will be broken into 2 parts. The first part will be this intro and Cassidy's interview, and the second part will be like another intro, probably, and
more like a short little segment.
And Clark's interview, just because our interviews were long, and I want y'all to get to listen to everything that our interviewees had to say because it was all just really good. This episode is brought to you by Crush of the Week.
Hell yeah. Where did we write it down?
Oh, I deleted it.
Andy deleted it from our document. I told you not to do that, Andy.
Just
But anyway, I know what it is.
Undo.
While Andy does that,
Undo. Oh, we're getting somewhere. Undo. Edit. Undo. Edit. Undo. Undo. Edit.
I guess actually I'm just gonna sit and watch this.
Edit. Undo. Edit. Undo. I spelled identity wrong like 8 times, so it's taking a minute.
It was kind of on purpose.
Identities.
There it is.
Haha.
Okay.
Edit. Undo. Ha. There we go. Okay. Cool.
Anyway. Ooh, in sync again.
Whoa.
We're
so powerful.
Powerful gaze. This week's episode finally is brought to you by this week's Crush of the Week.
King Princess. I know you're not King Princess you, but our listeners. I know y'all aren't surprised.
Yeah.
Anyways.
But then, for an actual surprise, our other Crush of the Week is Naomi Watts. Because back when we were planning this episode, I don't know why, but I was thinking about her a lot. And, and my brain went full gay for a second there and lost the ability to word. But she's really cool.
She is cool.
She's great. Like, you can go back and watch her in The Ring and The Ring 2, and it's great. And then you can go and watch that show on Netflix, Gypsy. That was kind of a train wreck.
Oh, that
but in
show.
a good way.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of really sad that they canceled it because I want to know what would have happened. And as I'm thinking about it, I'm remembering that they said it was canceled because they blew their budget like way early on, but now I'm thinking it's probably because there was a queer relationship in it, and Netflix likes to cancel those.
Oh shit.
Yeah, so
Bring
Netflix,
us
if you're
back.
listening, I'm bringing a baseball bat to y'all's knees.
Do it.
Bring back the queers.
Also, like having an age gappy queer relation in Gypsy, because that's
important.
relatable.
And it's not important. It's relatable.
It is important. It's important. Well, I
I
think
feel like
it's
that's what you would call a Freudian
show
slip right there.
Well, yeah.
But that's about it for our intro. I mean, I didn't explicitly ask this, but do we have your consent to record you and use your voice for our podcast?
Yeah, yes, you do.
Yeah, okay. This is my sibling, Cassidy. I'm introducing you for podcast reasons. I forgot how old you are. Is that even, like, a thing worth introducing? Are you 24?
No, I'm 23.
Oh my god. Okay, Cassidy is 23. They just graduated from Grinnell College in Iowa with a major in gender, women, and sexuality studies and, like, I guess an art studio minor. I can never remember what it's called.
That's a double major in studio art and gender, women's sexuality studies.
Yes.
Cool. Yes, okay, and they are currently living in Oregon on a nice farm with multiple cats and a dog, German Shepherd, and there are chickens. Yes, it's very fun. I'm jealous. Okay. So yes. Andy, would you like to ask the first question?
Amazing. Cool. Welcome to our podcast. This is our second episode. Okay, so our first question is, what does being non-binary mean to you?
That's a tough question. I guess because it's changed over time. Like, I think what it meant for me was different, like, 4 years ago when I first came out as non-binary. It's different how I interpret that identity now than I did then. I guess for me, identifying as non-binary is a way to be constantly reflecting on like ways to be oppositional to like societal norms, and especially like normative practices that are like that support oppressive structures like the patriarchy. So like by identifying as non-binary and using they them pronouns, not only am I reminding myself on an everyday basis that like what I want is a future beyond like binary gender, but it's also when other people are forced to use my pronouns, it's forcing them to like kind of like absorb some of that as well.
Yeah, well, so since you said that its personal definition of it has changed over time, I guess our next question is, what was your journey like at the beginning compared to now? And then, like, where do you feel you are at now? So, like,
that's a good question as well. I think that I started by just learning about what transgender means, what non-binary means, through the internet, through Tumblr, like, probably, mostly. And that was starting off when I was, like, 15 and 16. And then it was more of just, like, a curiosity, and kind of, like, something that I just wanted to understand better, but not something that I claimed for myself. But over time, and like through some self-exploration, it became more clear to me that it was something that I wanted to identify as. I feel like it's constantly a journey. Like, I don't feel like there's necessarily like an end point, which is like why I don't like the narrative of like transitioning, because there's this idea that you like are starving in one concrete place in like time and space that just doesn't necessarily exist, and you're going to end up somewhere that's also like solid and like non-movable. And that's just not how anything in life works. So I guess where I am now is I feel a lot more comfortable with myself, and with other people, and with my presentation of gender, and also just like self-categorization.
Nice. I have another question. It's not one of the ones that we have written down, but I thought of it as you were talking. And, well, I was wondering if, because, Flagstaff's kind of small, and, like, it's our little liberal bubble, but, which is nice, but not a whole lot of exposure to different things. So I was wondering if, going out to Grinnell and having the opportunity to take, like, classes on this subject, or just being out in the world more. And I mean, you're also a very well-traveled person, so not just in Grinnell, if any of that like either created more curiosity or more of an understanding, or like helped you to realize certain things.
I think, well, I used like going to Grinnell more as like an opportunity to like establish the use of they them pronouns. Like, that's what I started using there. And it was really difficult my first year to like assert myself with those pronouns, but it became easier as I discovered like a much more intentional queer community within the college than I had ever been a part of in Flagstaff or anywhere else. And so that definitely helped me stand up for my, understanding of my identity, as well as like taking classes and learning more. And yeah, I don't know how much travel did for it specifically, other than like as a general time for self-reflection.
Yeah. In kind of the earlier stages of discovering your identity in terms of gender, was there like a person that you met that kind of like expressed themselves in like a way that you connected with, or maybe like some different people that you meet, or even like like texts that you read or posts that you saw that kind of inspired you or you felt like connected to?
Right now, I can't really think of like any like one like person or thing, but like early 2000 or early like 2000, around 2010-ish, Tumblr culture like very much like taught me, or like was where I got my roots in like understandings of like my early understandings of feminism and feminist practice, as well as like different ideas on gender and sexuality. And so there was a lot of like visibility on that site of people who were transitioning or like questioning their gender. And then I remember seeking out like YouTube videos as well of people who were transitioning, but at the time, non-binary wasn't so much of a thing. So I was more educating myself on like a more binary transgender experience.
So yeah, I guess then our next question, and I thought you would be a great source for this, honestly. Like, if you just have any good ideas of resources for non-binary individuals, like either online or like, you know, for educational purposes, or not even for just for non-binary people, but like for people who could use a bit more understanding of any of it, even if it's not like what they identify as well.
I guess there are certain like texts that I read multiple times over the course of my like 4-year degree, which I personally found really helpful, and would recommend just in general for people to understand basic concepts of feminism and intersectionality. So one of those texts is the Kumbahi Black River Collective text on Black feminism, as well as Kathy Cohen's Punks, Bull Daggers, and Welfare Queens. Is an article that's about between 20 and 30 pages that really is the foundational theory building of intersectionality and how that functions within both feminism and like bigger ideas of systemic oppression. So those are two really good places to start. Some of my favorite texts are like authors in general that I found really helpful are Paulo Freire, Bell Hooks, Audre Lorde, Naomi Klein, W.E.B. Du Bois, Franz Fanon, Asada Shakur, I believe is her name. I could be wrong. Eli Clare, also.
Cool. So, kind of going off of like resources. Well, actually no, but
I mean, almost.
Yeah, sure.
In a
Why
very
not?
loose
It's all
way.
it's
It's
together.
okay. We can edit it around.
So much. Okay. Our next question is like, how can non-binary people non-binary people
Binary.
be an ally to non-binary people and kind of dismantling gender roles?
And I guess also this can kind of go in line with like, you know, the challenges of like asserting your identity and your pronouns or, you know, whatever is most important to you, and like, because I feel like that is probably like a really good part of being a good ally / person is respecting someone in that way.
Yeah, no, I think you're definitely right there. Where, you know, I think one of the most important parts of being an ally is being respectful and respecting, you know, other people's existence and their lived experience and trusting them and that experience and trusting that experience is real and worth believing in. I think in general, something that is beneficial to everybody is, to kind of confront, especially the gender roles that we are most secure and comfortable in. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to completely abandon those gender roles, or that they're bad, or that they're bad all the time, or that they're wrong or shouldn't exist. But we do need to acknowledge that they exist, and that it's incredibly difficult to have conversations without an understanding of what those gender roles look like, and what they can mean, and what they do mean for certain people in certain contexts. So just understanding that gender isn't something static or binary is and understanding that, and really how do I say this, putting it into practice in your day-to-day life is the most important thing I think that you can do as an ally to non-cis people, but just also in general, it's an important practice.
We were also wondering, because as a part of our broader episode here, we plan to, is it weird to say we plan to, depending on how we edit it? Anyway,
we planned to, maybe it will happen, who knows?
Yeah, anyway, we were thinking about, non-binary artists, particularly musicians, and also celebrities, I guess, or well-known people, which then turned around into wondering how you as a non-binary person feel you're being represented. What?
Represented.
Okay, I'm sorry. I feel like it's getting a bit more common to see it gay couples or lesbian couples in media, and mainstream media, but there's still so much that we're very slowly working towards presenting, and so we were wondering how you feel about that currently.
Yeah, I feel like if there is a conversation about non-binary trans people in general or popular media, it's within the realm of thinking about non-binary people as just another third gender category, instead of something that is representative of a dismantling of gender categories, which is a lot more difficult for people to grapple with. So it's a lot more easy to think of non-binary as a third gender, and just categorize all non-binary people as they're that type of person. And so I think that representation isn't really the answer to anything, but especially in understanding non-binary identities, because there is no one way to represent a non-binary person. I think it's it'd be great if we could be having more conversations in the general media about what non-binary means or could mean, but I don't want it to be the conversation of non-binary is X third gender, and I don't really see that conversation happening yet in popular media. But I'm also not super imbibed with pop media.
Yeah. Do you, well, I was thinking about, like, how many shows, or, like, well, for an example, TV shows, like, if a character isn't, anyway, so, like, to use TV shows as an example, like, if a character isn't already out as, like, gay, as an example, then it's always written in for them to come out. And that sometimes bothers me a bit, because it's like, how many times can you say almost like, I mean, every person's story is different, even fictional people, but
it tends to follow the same narrative,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, it feels like a stagnant way of this into, like, media. So then, like, I guess my question is, would you loath to see a bunch of, like, coming out stories, basically, in TV shows or movies or whatever, as opposed to just, like, having a character be what they are and, like, not needing to talk about it necessarily?
Yeah, I mean, like I would appreciate the latter more, but I think that despite everything, it is, like, important for especially, like, younger people to have, like, explicit representation or, like, confirmation, like, explicit demonstration of, like, other types of gender and sexuality, and, like, explanation has to be a part of that in our current society, because it's not, like, conversations aren't normalized, and so a lot of kids don't understand it right off the bat. So I think that, like, representation, especially for younger people, and but as not just representation, but information is important right now. But it's not the end all be all, and it's not where we should stop working.
How do you navigate the intersection between gender and sexuality, and how has that played into your life, if you want to answer that?
For me, I think it became a lot easier to, like, I never really felt like I was straight, but I also never really felt pressure to come out or, like, say I'm not straight.
I mean, to be fair, it's been pressure.
Yeah, I think it was partially just the way we were raised, where it was like, it doesn't really, like, it's not going to be a big deal.
Yeah.
In the way that, like, it's a big deal, like, because, like, oh, we, like, love you and care about you, but it's not a big deal because, like, oh, it's bad.
Yeah.
And so it just, like, never really felt that important to acknowledge. And I think, like, there's not, at least during my time at Fallout, there were not a lot of, like, openly, like, queer people, even though, like, we were known for being, like, that.
Real quick, then, how do you define queer when you say that?
I mean, there was just, like, there wasn't really anyone who was gay in my class. Or, like, I mean, like, I can think, like, one person, or, like, a few people, like, identified as, like, gay or bisexual, but it wasn't, like, it wasn't a thing.
That's interesting,
and
because both Andy and I were surprised by that, because
our whole grade was like,
yeah,
Yeah, no, your guys' grade was a lot more. And it's interesting because, like,
a few years apart.
Yeah.
in the years since I've graduated, like, I feel like a lot more of my peers have, like, come out, or, like, but not, like, even explicitly, but just, like, kind of, like, yeah, but I feel like that's, like, a kind of a trend in general for our age group. But yeah, it was funny because during high school it was mostly felt very straight.
But I guess there is a part of it that's like there are people who are like queer in our grade because
it was just kind of the
just,
thing to
sleeping with each other.
Yeah,
but
our
the whole
grade was.
But it wasn't like necessarily super central to their identity, except for like us.
Yeah, I mean, like,
and
well, yeah, we had a few people who were
school.
like, we are this way, and
yeah,
it's like strict. Well,
Yeah,
not
that's
necessarily
true.
strict. Like,
or it got stricter over time as they figured their stuff out more.
yeah,
Like identity policing type stuff,
yeah,
like where they feel like there's only one way to be gay, and if you're not like gay that way, then you're not like a good enough gay.
yeah. Well, I think
Yeah.
some people like
Sometimes.
did individual, at least didn't feel like I was being policed by my peers, but I feel like I might have seen it in a few individuals, more like internally.
Yeah, like they police themselves to
Yeah.
be like they dress a certain way so that they can be like, I'm so gay, but I'm like, well, you are, and that's cool, and
Yeah.
you can be you in any form and still be gay, like,
Yeah.
but there was definitely that, like, at times, but I think it was mostly self-policing and, like, just trying to figure things out and feel good and validated about yourself, and then those people that maybe were stricter have, I think, kind of changed now in college,
Yeah.
and a little bit more about it, or gotten more strict, really both ways.
Yeah. So that's, I guess, almost another question. Like, do you feel like going to college, or just even just like moving out of your hometown or something, did that play a role for you, or do you think it's like likely for people to factor that in, I guess, in terms of like being more flexible or creating a more open mindset to how they want to.
I don't think that, like, I think there's the notion that, like, moving to a more populous place, or like moving to like a city, or a place that's like supposed to be, or is like seen as like labeled as progressive, will that make you yourself more progressive? But that's just not the case. Like, there's plenty of progressive people who live in rural communities as well.
We wrote down non-binary hopes for the future ? Which is not a perfectly phrased question. Yeah, I guess. And like, yeah, it can be personal hopes, or like hopes for the world, for
well, I will share what I've been thinking about lately, which is what Angela Davis said recently about trans and non-binary people, in that non-binary people have already represent a way for us to think or imagine possible futures that are outside of the strict capitalist, patriarchal, white supremacist regime that we all live under. And so I really was taken by that idea, and I think that it's true, and I think that that's why it's so important for us as individuals to think about gender, both on like an individual self-reflective scale, and also on a larger scale of like gender roles and gender in the media, and how it affects us, because it really does play a huge role in our lives, and I think that transgressing those norms can offer ways of thinking about other possible futures.
I dig it.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Very well said, Melissa.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Well, thank you
cool.
so much for letting us interview you for our podcast.
Thank
it was
you.
Wonderful.
It was a delightful
Yeah, no
conversation.
problem. I'm excited to see how your podcast turns out.
Thank you.
Give it a listen.
To Andy.
I've looked at this. I'm working on it.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Could have stopped the recording earlier, but it didn't.